With the U.S. considering military action against Syria, an Asian country that has become a modern-day humanitarian and geopolitical disaster, we wondered, what is the short history of Syria over the last 100 years? We start out in 1918. World War I comes to an end, and with it, 400 years of Ottoman rule over Syria. But almost immediately, with European powers redrawing the world map, the French take control of Syria. National uprisings eventually pushed the French to agree to Syrian independence, but French troops remain in the country through World War II. It's only after the Allies win the war that the French finally pull out. This is what Damascus, the capital, looks like around then.
Of the 300,000 inhabitants, about 80% are Muslims.
But these Muslims come from various sects. The majority are Sunni. The 1940s and 1950s are turbulent political times. For the most part, military leaders ruled the country, eventually aligning themselves with the Soviet Union, which supplies arms to Syria. Then Syria joins with Egypt to form a country called the United Arab Republic. But just 3 years later, Syrian army officers reclaim Damascus, and Syria returns to being a sovereign state. The 60s are a decade of coups, military revolts, and riots, capped off by the Six-Day War. Israel, believing its Arab neighbors would soon attack it, preemptively bombs and all but destroys the Egyptian, Jordanian, Iraqi, and Syrian air forces. Among the territories Israel captures, Syria's Golan Heights. After that, Syria's defense minister, al-Assad, seizes power. He comes from the Alawite minority sect. He keeps Syria at the center of the Arab-Israeli conflict, launching with Egypt a surprise attack on Israel to win back the Golan Heights. It becomes a war of attrition. Secretary of State Henry Kissinger travels to Damascus, brokering a peace deal that returns some of Golan to Syria. But Syria-U.S. relations sour after the Iranian Islamic Revolution, when Syria allies itself with Ayatollah Khomeini and supports Iran in its war with Iraq. But internally, Islamic groups are unhappy with Assad's lack of devoutness and try to topple him. He violently suppresses a Muslim Brotherhood uprising in the city of Hama. Thousands of civilians die. Relations with the West improve when, after Saddam Hussein invades Kuwait in 1990, Syria joins the US-led coalition against Iraq. 10 years later, Assad dies. His son, Bashar, takes over. After the September 11th attacks in 2001, relations with the U.S. take another turn for the worse, with Syria making the Bush administration's axis of evil. They slide further with the assassination of Lebanon's former Prime Minister, Rafik Hariri, the UN implicating Syrian officials. A few years later, Israel bombs what it says is a Syrian nuclear facility under construction, and President Obama renews sanctions against Syria over its alleged support for terrorists. Revolutions in Egypt and Tunisia inspire protests against Assad, leading to government suppression, which escalates into the sectarian civil war that has now killed over 100,000 people. Syria's turbulent recent history has reached another troubling milestone, with allegations that the regime has used chemical weapons, and now seems as uncertain a time as any in the country's history. That's the short answer.